They didn't use toilets, and that's not even the craziest part. What people did to stay clean in the Middle Ages will flip everything you thought you knew. It wasn't just dirty. It was clever, chaotic, and completely unexpected. Behind every habit was a reason. But none of them make sense today. Ready to see how deep it goes? Let's start where medieval hygiene looked surprisingly organized. Public bathhouses filled medieval towns like taverns filled with thirsty travelers. These steamy buildings weren't luxury spots reserved for nobles, but bustling social hubs where conversation flowed as freely as the murky bathwater. Medieval bathhouses were the original community pools, except the water was brown and everyone brought their own diseases. Towns competed fiercely to have the best facilities, while people gathered not just to get clean, but to socialize and catch up on local news. While common folk shared communal baths, wealthy households took a different approach entirely. They installed private bathing setups using wooden tubs filled with heated water. Rich families added herbs like lavender and mint, while some imported expensive scented oils from distant lands. However, the preparation process was incredibly labor-intensive. Servants hauled countless buckets of water, heated it over fires, then filled the tubs. One bath could require hours of preparation work. Getting clean required more staff than a modern wedding and probably cost about the same. Soap existed but came at a fortune for most people. Made from animal fat and harsh lye, it could strip skin raw if used incorrectly. The poor relied instead on vigorous scrubbing with rough cloths. Yet something strange happened as time passed. Bathing frequency began declining later in the medieval period. Fear crept into people's minds as they started believing that hot water opened pores, making bodies vulnerable to disease. Religious attitudes shifted dramatically as well. Church leaders viewed excessive bathing as vanity, and monks who once bathed regularly now saw it as sinful behavior. Medieval people went from thinking baths were healthy to thinking they were deadly. Talk about a complete 180 on the hygiene scale. The decline wasn't universal, though. Scandinavian countries kept their sauna culture alive, while Mediterranean areas stayed cleaner due to warmer climates. Social class determined every bathing experience across medieval Europe's diverse kingdoms and territories, creating stark differences in hygiene access and quality. Nobles enjoyed heated rooms and servants, while peasants made do with cold streams and hoped for warmer weather throughout the long winter months. Even as regular bathing declined, people didn't abandon cleanliness entirely. They discovered alternative methods that involved facilities quite different from modern expectations. Garderobes served as medieval castle toilets, featuring stone or wooden seats positioned over vertical shafts that dropped waste straight down into cesspits or moats below. Castle builders simply carved holes in stone seats and positioned them over deep vertical drops. Gravity handled everything else without requiring complex plumbing systems. Medieval bathroom engineering was basically dig hole, sit on hole, hope for the best. The engineering was actually quite clever. Vertical shafts kept unpleasant smells from rising back up into living spaces, at least most of the time. While nobles enjoyed their garderobes, peasants relied on much simpler solutions. Outdoor pits served most rural families effectively, though privacy was minimal and comfort was non-existent. Many rural people simply used open fields when nature called. This wasn't laziness, but practical farming. Human waste actually enriched soil quality. For indoor convenience, chamber pots provided the solution during harsh weather. These ceramic containers lived under beds, though someone had to empty them regularly. Being the chamber pot guy was like being the designated driver, except instead of getting people home safely, you were just dealing with their crap. Urban areas faced bigger challenges, leading to gong farmers who collected human waste from cesspits during nighttime hours. The job involved serious dangers, toxic gases, suffocation, or drowning, but payment was actually quite good. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect involved wiping materials. Toilet paper didn't exist, so people got creative using whatever they could find. Moss was popular for its softness and absorption. Hay worked well for rural folks, while leaves served similar purposes, though choosing the wrong plant species could create bigger problems. Medieval people had to become botanical experts just to avoid turning bathroom time into poison ivy time. Cloth rags represented reusable options for families who could afford fabric. Meanwhile, sheep's wool was considered the ultimate luxury, soft, absorbent, and comfortable. Social status determines wiping material quality. Rich people enjoyed soft materials and multiple options, while poor people used rocks, sticks, and rough plants when desperate. Seasonal availability dramatically affected choices throughout the changing months of each medieval year, forcing careful planning and resource management. Spring and summer provided fresh leaves and moss, but winter forced people to stockpile materials or resort to less pleasant alternatives when nature's bathroom supplies ran out completely. How people managed to keep their clothing clean reveals even more surprising details. Laundry in medieval times happened in rivers or large tubs using harsh ash, soapwort, or lye-based solutions that could burn skin right off your hands. Rivers transformed into community laundry centers where women gathered with baskets of dirty clothes. The work was backbreaking, but it became valuable social time. Medieval laundry day was part washing clothes, part neighborhood gossip network, and part extreme sport. The cleaning process was brutal on both clothes and people. Lye solutions were strong enough to break down stains, but caustic enough to cause chemical burns. Fortunately, soapwort provided a gentler alternative. When crushed and mixed with water, it produced natural suds that cleaned effectively without destroying fabric. However, clothing wasn't washed frequently by modern standards. Most families managed laundry maybe every few weeks at best, since washing required enormous amounts of labor, time, and precious water. Doing medieval laundry was like a full-body workout, except instead of getting fit, you just got clothes that were slightly less disgusting. Water itself was often scarce. Wells served drinking needs first, while rivers might be far from homes, requiring long walks carrying heavy buckets. Wool and linen dominated clothing choices. Wool provided warmth, but was extremely difficult to clean without damage. Given their value, outer garments rarely received full washing. Instead, people brushed them vigorously and hung them outside in fresh air to eliminate odors. Strategic layers helped extend cleanliness. People wore linen undergarments against their skin, then added wool outer layers. The linen caught most body oils and sweat. Stain removal became a specialized art form. Bloodstains, food spills, and body fluids each demanded different approaches. Women passed down stain-fighting secrets through generations. Medieval stain removal was basically alchemy, except instead of turning lead into gold, you were trying to turn mystery stains into clean fabric. Color preservation presented another challenge for medieval families trying to maintain their appearance and social standing within their communities. Dyes were expensive and faded easily with harsh washing methods, making bright clothing a constant battle between cleanliness and maintaining vibrant colors that displayed wealth and status. How medieval people handled basic hand hygiene reveals another crucial survival strategy. Hand washing before meals was expected behavior among nobles who used shared water basins and communal towels that hung in dining areas. The ritual carried significant social meaning beyond cleanliness. Proper hand washing demonstrated good breeding and respect for dining companions. Skipping this step marked someone as crude or poorly raised. Medieval hand washing was like a social test where failing meant everyone knew you were raised by wolves. Nobles developed elaborate ceremonies to display wealth. Servants brought ornate basins with scented water, while others held embroidered towels featuring family crests. Water was typically used alone because soap remained too expensive. Most people simply rinsed their hands briefly, rubbed them together, then dried them on available cloth. Shared water basins created hygiene challenges. The first person enjoyed clean water, but by the 10th person, the water resembled muddy soup filled with dirt and grease. Monastic communities developed stricter hand-washing routines connected to prayer schedules. These communities maintained significantly better hygiene standards than secular groups. The connection between hand-washing and meals made practical sense. People ate with their hands, sharing food from common dishes. Clean hands meant less contamination. Medieval dinner parties were basically community germ-sharing events with a side of food. Communal dining created natural peer pressure for hand-washing. Nobody wanted to be the obviously dirty person reaching into the shared bread bowl. Towels represented significant household investments. Good cloth was expensive, so towels were shared among multiple family members over extended periods. Different social classes had varying access to resources. Peasant families might share a single rough cloth among 10 people, while merchants could afford better towels but still shared them widely. Seasonal changes affected habits. Winter made water painfully cold, discouraging thorough cleaning, while summer provided comfort but created more opportunities for dirty hands. The timing reveals medieval priorities. People washed hands before eating, but rarely after using toilets. They understood food contamination better than disease transmission from waste. Medieval people treated hand washing like a pre-meal ritual, but post-bathroom hygiene was more of a suggestions welcome situation. Individual hand washing habits were just a small part of managing health in growing medieval communities where disease could spread rapidly. The much bigger challenge of waste disposal affected entire cities and required coordinated efforts from government officials, private entrepreneurs, and ordinary citizens working together to maintain basic sanitation standards. The much bigger challenge of waste disposal affected entire cities. Urban streets were polluted with market waste, animal droppings, and toxic runoff from crafts like tanning that created poisonous streams flowing through city centers. Medieval cities were essentially open sewers with buildings around them. Market vendors tossed rotten vegetables into the streets, while animals deposited waste wherever they stood. Meanwhile, craftsmen dumped chemical byproducts outside their workshops. Medieval city planning followed the throw it outside and let gravity sort it out approach to urban design. Tanning operations created particularly disgusting pollution. The leather-making process required urine, animal feces, and toxic chemicals that produced putrid streams running through neighborhoods. City authorities fought back by imposing fines for dumping near wells or water sources. These laws existed on paper, but enforcement was inconsistent. The fine system favored wealthy polluters. Prosperous merchants could afford penalties, treating fines as business expenses, while poor residents faced serious consequences for identical violations. Medieval environmental law was pay to pollute, except the pollution was literally human waste, and the prices were surprisingly reasonable. Well, protection became critical because contaminated water meant death for entire neighborhoods. Cities stationed guards near wells and imposed severe penalties for nearby dumping. Miasma theory dominated disease understanding. People believed bad air caused illness, leading to efforts aimed at improving air quality and reducing offensive odors. This theory was scientifically wrong, but accidentally encouraged helpful practices. People avoided polluted areas and tried eliminating sources of bad smells. Some cities hired street cleaners, though their job was nearly impossible given constant waste accumulation. These workers used basic tools like brooms and wooden carts. Seasonal weather created complications. Winter froze waste solid, making removal impossible, while spring thaws created rivers of accumulated filth flowing through streets. Medieval spring was when winter's frozen garbage collection finally melted into flowing rivers of regret. Private waste disposal emerged as a profitable business. Entrepreneurs collected waste for fees, then sold it to farmers as fertilizer. Different neighborhoods experienced varying success. Wealthy districts could afford private cleaning services, while poor areas accumulated waste that rarely received attention. Some cities designated dumping areas outside walls, creating organized waste sites that centralized management but created massive piles of rotting material near residential areas. These early landfills solved immediate urban problems but created new environmental challenges for surrounding communities who had to deal with the smell, contamination, and health risks. The constant battle against tiny living invaders required completely different strategies. Fine-tooth combs were essential daily tools for medieval people fighting lice infestations that affected everyone regardless of social class or cleanliness habits. Lice were completely unavoidable in medieval society. Rich nobles, poor peasants, clean monks, and dirty laborers all hosted these tiny parasites equally. The creatures showed no preference for social status. Medieval lice were the ultimate equal opportunity employers. They didn't discriminate based on wealth. They just wanted a warm head to call home. Daily combing became an essential survival ritual rather than simple grooming. People carried fine-tooth combs everywhere, using spare moments to hunt through their hair for lice and eggs. The combs themselves were valuable possessions made from bone, wood, or expensive metal. These irreplaceable tools created genuine crises when lost. Combing rituals developed into social bonding activities. Parents, children, and siblings helped each other search for lice and eggs, transforming pest control into relationship-building time. Beyond personal grooming, bedding, and clothing required regular airing or smoking procedures to make conditions unbearable for parasites. people discovered that certain environmental conditions encouraged parasites to abandon their hiding places. Smoking treatments involved burning specific herbs that produced smoke toxic to insects but tolerable for humans. Wormwood, lavender, and certain woods created effective fumigation. Medieval pest control was basically chemical warfare, except the chemicals were herbs and the enemy was the size of a grain of rice. Outdoor airing and sunlight helped disrupt parasite breeding cycles. Temperature changes, air movement, and ultraviolet light made fabric items less hospitable for unwanted inhabitants. Strategic placement of herbal mixtures like wormwood or lavender in storage areas created hostile environments that discouraged parasite settlement. Head shaving became a practical last resort solution, especially in monastic communities and among poor families. Removing hair eliminated hiding places where lice could establish colonies. Monks maintained some of the cleanest scalps through regular shaving routines. Medieval monks discovered that the secret to pest-free living was the bald look, making them accidentally fashionable about 600 years early. Tightly braided hairstyles limited pest habitats by reducing accessible areas where lice could establish breeding colonies. Complex braiding served both fashion and pest control purposes. Different social classes approached pest control with varying resources. Wealthy nobles could afford multiple strategies, including fine combs and herbal treatments, while peasant families used whatever free methods they could find. Seasonal patterns emerged based on parasite behavior. Spring brought renewed infestations as parasites became active after winter, while summer heat encouraged frequent treatments. Winter provided natural pest control by creating harsh conditions that reduced parasite populations. Cold temperatures slowed reproduction and made survival difficult. Children required special attention because they played in dirt, shared close spaces, and couldn't maintain adult hygiene standards consistently throughout their daily medieval childhood activities. Parents devoted considerable time to managing their children's parasite problems, teaching them proper grooming techniques while also accepting that complete pest elimination was nearly impossible, given the living conditions and limited resources available to most families. Medieval people found creative ways to stay clean despite overwhelming challenges. Their methods might seem strange today, but they worked with what they had.